What's up, this is Antonio, and welcome back to my channel. Now, who's ready for some fighting words? In this video, I want to do a fight breakdown / prediction for Canelo Alvarez versus John Ryder. So if you're unfamiliar with the channel, or maybe you're new to the channel and you don't quite know how I do fight breakdowns and predictions, basically I'll take both guys, I'll place them side by side, I'll run down a list of attributes, and whoever has more points in the end, that's the individual that I'm going to go with. Also, before we get into this video, if you could hit that subscribe button, it really does help the channel. It only takes 1 second. Also, if you could hit that thumbs up button, that would really be appreciated, and that also helps and further alongs this channel. So without further ado, let's jump into this. Experience, Canelo Alvarez, hands down. I mean, I think experience is always the best and easiest to start with, but hands down, it's Canelo Alvarez. He's fought the who's who, literally the who's who of, in boxing. I mean, probably the only two guys, in the last like 30 years, who's 20, 30 years, who's got a better resume is what, Floyd Mayweather. You can argue a Manny Pacquiao, but you know what I'm saying? So it's just like Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez has more knockouts than John Ryder has fights. So that's got to tell you something. And, especially in the earlier half of his career, he wasn't fighting any slouches. Not to say that he's fighting slouches now, because he's definitely stepping up. But there's nothing to compare here. John Ryder, I think he's a good little fighter, but there's really nothing to compare. And there's no way for me to make a case for John Ryder talking about experience and trying to add him up or compare him to Canelo Alvarez. Power. Again, Canelo Alvarez has more knockouts than John Ryder has more fights. Obviously, who has more power? I would say Canelo Alvarez. And he's fought the tougher competition. So without a shadow of a doubt, I would go with Canelo Alvarez. That is not to say that John Ryder is some pushover, some walk in the park. He is definitely not the person you think you're just going to stand in front of. And let me just say this early. John Ryder is not just showing up for a check. I mean, don't get it twisted. It's Canelo. You're going to make a check. You're probably going to make the biggest payday you've ever made. But John Ryder is not the type of individual where you're just going to show up and get a check, or you're going to work for that. Like Canelo's going to work for it. It's just the way it is. John Ryder is a hard hitter. He's a very aggressive fighter. He's a very tough, sluggish, come forward type of guy. He's not a slouch. He's got decent head movement. Mental toughness. Well, so again, I got to go with Canelo Alvarez, and this is starting to look like a landslide, but I got to go with Canelo Alvarez. Why am I saying Canelo Alvarez? Well, one, because Canelo Alvarez has been fighting the best of the best since he's been like 20. That's number one. Number two, Canelo Alvarez keeps going up in weight, and he's putting himself in dangerous territory. And I don't see John Ryder doing that. I'm sorry. So when I look at the two, I got to go Canelo Alvarez again. That's mental toughness. For him to believe in himself enough to say, you know what, I'm going to go where the giants are, and I know I'm not a true or a natural giant, and yet I'm going to go and compete with giants. That's got to say something about the guy, his mental toughness. Durability. John Ryder is a tough guy. I would definitely give that to him. He's a tough guy. He's a tough, durable guy. He's coming forward. He's going to make a case for himself for a fight of the night every time he fights. But when I look at durability, Canelo fought Cotto. Cotto is no walk in the park by any means. I don't care. Every time somebody tells a story about Miguel Cotto, they talk about this dude hits freakishly hard. Then you also look at the Canelo fighting Triple G, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Triple G couldn't get this man off his feet. This is not Canelo's natural weight. And he can't get in Triple G. A real hard hitter, a real slugger, a real power puncher could not get Canelo Alvarez off of his feet. I mean, I don't really think he cut him in those 3 fights. I think maybe once he cut him. Drop that down below if you remember Canelo getting cut. But when I look at durability, hands down, it's Canelo Alvarez. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Canelo fought Bivol, although I don't think he should have been in there with Bivol. Nonetheless, he fought a much bigger, much more skilled guy, and he didn't lose his footing. No, he didn't fall to his knees. No, he didn't take an 8 count. No, he wasn't bloodied up and beaten badly. No. So durability, I'm sorry, Canelo Alvarez. Arsenal. So here's the thing when it comes to Arsenal. I think John Ryder and Canelo Alvarez are kind of similar in the sense that if you want to see them at their most comfortable, you would obviously they would fight closer up, more in the pocket. They're more comfortable in that spacing. However, that's all John Ryder has. He doesn't have anything else. He doesn't fight at all at distance. His whole range fighting is him getting closer, him trying to leverage himself to get closer. He doesn't have anything else. That's not to say he doesn't have a nice jab or anything like that, but that's not his game. An outside game is just not his game. His whole outside game is to get closer at all times. Once he gets close, then he's going to open up, and he's not shy to open up. He's a very heavy-handed guy, and he's a great body puncher. But Canelo Alvarez, if you want to fight at a distance, he can do that. Again, we've seen him fight, especially recent years, much taller, much bigger guys, where that distance means even more now because these guys are taller, they have longer reach, and yet he still manages to do his thing on the outside and then manages to find himself on the inside where he can shut down opponents. So again, I have to go Canelo Alvarez. That's not to say that John Ryder doesn't have a good inside game, but Canelo Alvarez can do the same thing he can do on the inside on the outside. And that means he clearly has more of an arsenal. And when you talk about Canelo Alvarez, we're talking about vicious body work, crazy shovel hooks, liver shots that are going to drop pretty much anybody outside of Triple G. It's going to drop, anybody. Like vicious body work. A lot of people saying this fight is not going to be competitive or anything like that. Listen, that's neither here nor there at this point because it's going to happen regardless. But what I want to see is what happens when the two guys find themselves up close and personal. Because like I said, that's where John Ryder lives. And that's where Canelo lives as well. So I want to see what happens and who's going to take a back step first. Because John Ryder is not the guy who likes taking back steps. So we're going to see. Boxing IQ. Again, you got to go Canelo Alvarez. I think just the fight with Floyd Mayweather alone, you see the difference before and after. There is a huge difference. I think his pacing himself, I think him understanding the different level of punching impact, from round 1 to round 12, but also varying in the round. Not everything deserves 150%, in a punch. Patient, distance, head movement. He didn't have head movement like that prior to Floyd Mayweather fight. So there's a lot of things that he took from that, and he grew from that. Now you're talking about a much more seasoned, a much more experienced, a much more battle-tested Canelo Alvarez. Yeah. So boxing IQ, I'm sorry. Once again, we're going to Canelo Alvarez, and yes, it is going probably to be a landslide. Confidence. I'm saying Canelo Alvarez again. Why? Because he's gone all the way up to 175. That's some freaking confidence, okay? That's confidence. I'm talking about a man who fought at 47. That's confidence. All right, go all the way up there with some guys you technically don't belong around, and you're calling out guys who you don't belong in the ring with. That's confidence. He says he wants a rematch with Bivol. That's confidence. He says he'd like to get in the ring with Better Bib. That's confidence. A little bit of craziness as well, but it's confidence. Sorry. Let's see. Adaptability. Canelo, well, he is on his European tour right now, but I would say he's been adapting well with everybody he's come across, John Ryder doesn't have any adaptability. John Ryder is going to be John Ryder, and that's just, it is what it is. He's going to be John Ryder. And that's not a knock at him because, he's not a terrible fighter, but he's not the type of guy who can manipulate the situation or change up anything in the situation or realize when something isn't working or if something. I feel like he only has one mode, which is go. And I don't feel like his defense is up to par when you look at a Canelo. So, when I look at adaptability, I'm sorry, Canelo has great adaptability. His head movement is, I don't want to say second to none, but it's pretty good. His ability to manage range, pretty good. Not to mention how he like stabilizes fighters. And then he manages to get up close to these guys when that was never the game plan for them to allow him to do. Yet he does it. So again, I gotta go with Canelo Alvarez. Cardio. I think Canelo can be a little sluggish at times. I think he'll take off around, which is interesting because I think that's the only place in this fight where I feel like John Ryder has a chance. And I do listen. For people who are saying he doesn't have a chance, as long as you got two hands and they're working hands, and you're training hard, and you can honestly say at the end of your training day that you put in 150% for however many weeks the fight is, training weeks that they are. If you can say you've done that, then you have a chance. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. Andy Ruiz, you got a chance. Okay? You got a chance. And like I said, the way John Ryder fights, he's not the type of guy who's just going to show up to get a check. He does not strike me as that. His career doesn't suggest that. So I'm not going to say that because nothing about him suggests anything of the sort. He strikes me as a real, gentleman of the sport. Even the way he conducted himself in the press conference, like he let it be known, yeah, I'm coming to win. But I would also like to thank you for the opportunity. Let's see. However, I do think that's when I look at cardio, like I said, Canelo doesn't have the best cardio in the world. He can get a little lazy from time to time, and he has every once in a while he will kind of lay there or like lay in the ropes or something like that. And I can foresee him doing that with John Ryder, but I see that as an opening and a window for John Ryder. Now, that's only if John Ryder can make it through those late rounds. And that's the question. Can you make it to round 8? Can you make it to round 8? Because if you can make it to round 8, there will be pockets of opportunity if you can make it to round 8. That's the question. If you can make it that far into the late rounds. Because Canelo will present for himself an opportunity for you to defeat him. Because at some point, we all know he's going to lean on those ropes. It is what it is. Let's see. Footwork. I don't think neither one of them have the best footwork. I think when you're looking at Canelo's defense, we're really looking at his head movement, waist up movement. He is slick upstairs, but he's not the most slickest guy on downstairs. However, being matched with John Ryder, I would say he is better footwork. Honestly, I would probably say they're about a tie. There's nothing special about John Ryder, but then again, footwork, there's nothing special about Canelo, to be honest with you. So I would say they're about a tie. Do I think by any means this fight is going to be won by footwork? No, I don't. Or positioning? No, not really. I think it's going to be won by force and power and something very violent. I definitely think it's going to be something very violent in this fight. Head movement, as I was speaking of earlier, Canelo Alvarez, without a shadow of a doubt. Very slick upstairs, very hard to hit, hard to manage, hard to handle. Canelo Alvarez, just watching the head movement in the Billy Joe Saunders fight. People say whatever they want about Billy Joe Saunders. He's not an easy guy to hit. You can say whatever you want about Billy Joe Saunders. He's a very accurate punching fighter, and the same goes for Caleb Plant. Very accurate punching fighter, and for these guys not to really put leather on Canelo Alvarez the way you would have thought they would have been able to, says something about Canelo Alvarez's head movement. Let's see. Fighting at range. I mentioned this earlier, but yeah, like I said, John Ryder has no range fighting abilities. I mean, his whole range fighting ability is John, get closer, and then unleash the dogs. That's basically it. Like I said, Canelo can fight at distance. He doesn't have to be up close. He can fight a nice boxing match at range. He would prefer to be closer because he would prefer that this thing doesn't go the whole distance. But he can do it. I've seen him do it, and he's able to do it. And I don't think this is going to be the opponent where he's going to be timid to do it if he has to. But I definitely think he can. So that's basically it with defense. Overall, obviously, it's pretty much a landslide. I have Canelo Alvarez winning. I don't see a whole lot for John Ryder unless he can make it to the championship round. If he can get this fight, I think really takes shape if John Ryder hasn't sustained an awful lot of damage through rounds up to round 7. And then he's going to have to patiently wait. Like I said earlier, he's going to have to patiently wait. Canelo will present at some point because he's going to lay on those ropes and he's not going to do anything. And he's going to let John Ryder kind of manage the ship at some point. But like I said, that's a dangerous thing to do because John Ryder is not a pushover. John Ryder, you know, he doesn't have a ton of knockouts, but he's got pop in those punches and he's not shy to let his hands go. And if you let him get close, not only is he not shy to let his hands go, not only does he not only just have pop in his punches, but he's a tremendous body puncher. He's a great inside fighter. If one thing I can say about the guy, great inside fighter, and he truly understands upstairs, downstairs, downstairs, upstairs. So once he gets inside, he really knows how to mix it up. You know, his combinations are sharp, they're crisp. That's one thing, another thing about his defense. He has very tight defense. You know, he doesn't really come out of this much. And if you just get him up close and personal, even when he's throwing his shots are just really, really tight. They're not like loose punches or anything like that. He's a very disciplined fighter when doing that, like meaning like the basics, your foundational stuff. He's very disciplined in that nature. And, you know, is it possible he can take Canelo out? It's possible. And like I said, anybody with 2 hands who gets in the ring, who has a full camp and they're healthy, it's possible. I know they have a game plan. I know, you know, several people, you know, in the division have been looking at Canelo for so long. I know they all got game plans. And they're all looking at, all right, well, I don't necessarily fight like that guy, but he did this well. And maybe we should take the jab from him and we should take that body hook from him. Whatever. You know, or we should be moving to the left, whatever the case may be. I do think there's a pocket of an opportunity for John Ryder. But like I said, he's got to make it to championship rounds, and he has to patiently wait. And if he can do that without sustaining a substantial amount of damage throughout the other rounds, then I think there is a window of opportunity. I'm not going to necessarily say hope, because hope is, to me, is more definite, but I will say a window of opportunity. And it's what he does with that opportunity. I think this is the type of fight where he would have to just go, you know, balls to the wall and just let it all hang out. Because with all due respect to him, I don't see any other way for him to win. It's hard for me to say he's going to be the one to knock Canelo out. You know, Triple G couldn't do it. But you never know. I mean, honestly, you just never know. Of all the people that AJ fought, who would have thought it would have been Andy Ruiz to knock him out? You know, so, I mean, you never know. So I can't say that he can't. I'm just saying what's the likelihood that he will. Overall, though, I have Canelo Alvarez. I have Canelo winning by probably round 7 or 8. And in the back of my mind, that sounds way too late in the fight. So I might even change it to 6 or 7. But I do think for however long this fight goes, I think it's going to be entertaining. John Ryder, like I said, is no pushover, no walk in the park. He's a very entertaining guy. And you will get your money's worth. I will get my money's worth in watching this fight. Do I think it's going to be the most memorable fight in the world? No, because John Ryder is not the most memorable fighter in the world. But I think just as boxing and as boxing fans, to see 2 guys get in there and slug it out, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, this might be as good as it gets, especially who Canelo's been fighting lately. Outside of the Triple G fights, in which case the last one wasn't that, you know, dramatic or anything like that. But, yeah, I have Canelo. I have Canelo by knockout, actually. John Ryder's a lot smaller than the other guys that Canelo's been facing, which, I don't know. I don't think it's going to help you, buddy. But you never know. So that's my fight breakdown / prediction. I have Canelo Alvarez by round 6 or 7. It should be a knockout, to be honest with you. I think John Ryder's going to help him out with that because he's going to be right there in front of him the whole time. But as always, please like, please share, please subscribe to this channel.